So today we're going to dive into the core ideas from Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Now this isn't just some list of self-help tips. The book really tries to lay out a deep framework for how to find meaning in a world that, let's be honest, can feel pretty chaotic. And it all kicks off with a surprisingly simple, kind of weird observation.
Get this, the book starts with this strange puzzle about us, about human nature. It points out that when doctors prescribe a medication, a full third of people won't even bother to get it filled. And of the people who do pick it up, half of them won't even take it correctly.
So this leads to the huge, central question the book tries to tackle. Why on earth do we fail to care for ourselves as well as we'd care for other people, or even our own pets? I mean, really think about that. This question is the doorway into the whole argument about order, chaos, and what it means to take responsibility for your own life.
Okay, so to even start to answer that, the source material suggests we first have to zoom out and look at a bigger problem in society. The argument is that our personal struggles, well, they don't just happen in a bubble. They're often made way worse by the cultural world we're all swimming in.
The basic idea here is that a lot of people today just feel adrift. The book describes this environment of what it calls moral relativism, where the whole idea of a clear right and wrong is seen as kind of old-fashioned or simplistic. And this lack of a moral compass, it argues, creates this giant vacuum of meaning that many people just can't stand.
And according to the book, this vacuum doesn't just leave you feeling empty. It's worse than that. It tends to push people toward one of two dangerous extremes you see here. On one side, you've got the despair of nihilism, the belief in absolutely nothing. And on the other, you get the rigid, blind certainty of ideologies that claim to have all the answers.
So from that external problem of a chaotic world, the framework then turns inward. It pivots to a problem that's deeply personal. The text suggests that the enemy isn't just out there, but it's also right here, staring back at us in the mirror.
This is such a powerful point from the book. You know, contrary to the popular idea that people are just arrogant and full of themselves, it argues that many of us are actually just crushed by self-contempt. We are our own worst critics, and we are painfully aware of every single one of our failures and flaws.
The book even gives this inner critic a name, but it reframes it. It's not a religious concept here, but a psychological reality it calls original sin. And it defines it simply as our unique and kind of terrible ability to know what the right thing to do is and still choose to do the wrong thing, to deliberately make situations worse. So here's where it all connects. Why don't we take our own medicine? Because deep down, we know our own capacity for evil. The source says no one understands the darkness of the individual better than the individual himself. And because we know our own darkness so intimately, we can't help but feel like we don't really deserve the best care. Okay, so we've got chaos on the outside and this really harsh critic on the inside. Sounds pretty grim, right? So what's the solution? What does the book propose as the way out? Well, this brings us to what it calls the antidote. And here's the twist. The answer, according to the source, isn't chasing happiness or making life easy. It's meaning. And meaning, it says, is found by willingly shouldering the burden of being. What does that mean? It means you voluntarily take on as much responsibility as you can possibly handle, for yourself, for your community, for the state of the world. And this slide really breaks down the two paths you can choose in life. You've got the expedient path. That's all about doing what's easy right now. Hiding from problems, telling little lies, just taking the path of least resistance. And then you have the meaningful path. That's about confronting difficulty head-on and doing what actually makes you and the world stronger in the long run. So, how do you even start down that meaningful path? It sounds huge, right? Well, the text breaks it down into some really practical first steps. It starts with your words and your actions. First, just stop saying things that you know in your gut make you feel weak and ashamed. Then, start doing only those things that you could talk about with pride. And finally, just aim. Aim to make the world a little bit better. To really hammer this idea home, this idea of choosing challenge over ease, the book uses this really powerful everyday metaphor. It's all about learning to see the world not just as a place full of dangers to avoid, but as an arena for mastery. So the author describes watching these teenage boys skateboarding, and they weren't just rolling around on the sidewalk. No, they were trying these super risky, difficult tricks on handrails, and they were failing, getting hurt, and then getting right back up to try it again. They were being brave. And this leads to a really key distinction the text makes.
We often think the goal in life is to minimize risk. Bubble wrap everything and make it all perfectly safe. But the source argues that's not what we actually want. We want to optimize risk. We crave a challenge that pushes us right to the edge of what we're capable of, because that's how we grow.
And that, right there, is the punchline of the whole metaphor. A playground that's too safe is just boring, and a life without any challenge is meaningless. The text suggests we're built to live right on that edge, where order meets chaos, and to find meaning in turning that chaos into something better.
Okay, so let's tie this all together. What's the ultimate takeaway from this whole framework? It really starts with a pretty tough premise. Life is suffering. But the book presents this not as some cynical complaint, but as the fundamental starting line. The point isn't to get angry and try to eliminate it, because you can't. The point is to confront it voluntarily, and then work to reduce the suffering that you can, both in your own life and in the lives of others.
And finally, at the very top of this whole pyramid is what the book calls a meta-goal. This is the one aim that's supposed to guide all your other goals. And that goal is simply to live in truth, to act and speak in a way that truly aligns with your conscience, and to face reality head-on, without hiding or lying.
So in the end, the book doesn't just hand you a list of easy answers. Instead, it leaves us with this really challenging thought experiment. It poses this question as a way for you to orient your own path forward. It's a pretty powerful idea to sit with, and a fitting end to this whole framework for life.